Hi, it's Cynthia at Pretty Paper Blackbirds. Thanks for watching. Let's take a look at some of the elements I'll be using today for this card, starting with die cuts. The Lawn Fawn Giant Trick or Treat Greeting die cut been one of my favorites this Halloween season. I've used it on several cards. It is a really nice big size for a greeting die cut. I believe it's 3 by 3 1/4. So it fits very nicely on the front of an A2 card. I'm also using the Simon Says stamp Sassy Witch Hat die cut set. Really love this set. I haven't seen a lot of cards online using it, and it's such a cute set. It layers really, really well. I'll be using Copics today to color the layers of this hat. Moving on to paper, I found this Recollections. It's a gradient glitter cardstock, so it's that flat cardstock. Glitter doesn't come off on your hands, but really love that green gold there on the left-hand side. So I've cut everything out and I'm matching my Copics here to this glitter cardstock. I'm using V9, V99, and V4, I believe. Yes. And what I'm going for here is layers on this hat that make the hat look really old and worn and scrunched. So starting with the bottom layer of the hat, I am going to go around the outside edges with this V99. I'm going to use a couple of different layers of alcohol ink on this layer. I really just want this to be the dark back layer. You won't see much of this once I've layered all of these pieces of the hat together. So making sure I get the outside edges as dark as I can. I'm not really worrying about the quality of the Copic coloring here, because you're really not going to see much of this other than the outside edges. So I will go around this several times. I think I put 3 layers of alcohol ink on this bottom layer, and it's looking pretty good. So moving on to the top layer. Now this is the layer you will see. So I'm going to take some time here. I'll speed this up, but what I'm doing is just using this V99 on the outside edges, and then I will use the V9 in the center. I'm kind of flicking out that color a little bit and leaving just a little bit of highlight area in the center to go back over with the V4. So this, again, I'm going for this worn, scrunched, old, kind of a grungy witch hat look. Maybe it was once a really nice satin hat, and now it's seen its better days. So I really like the look of this. These will be layered together. We have 2 more pieces here, the brim pieces. So there is a front brim piece and a back brim piece. And again, I don't want a lot of highlight on these. These are not really catching any reflected light. They're just the dark pieces at the bottom that look a little bit flipped up, so almost like the inside lining of the hat. So I am only concentrating on the V99 and the V9 here for both of these pieces and blending them out with those 2 colors to get them as dark as I possibly can, but also be able to see some of that purple color shining through so you can see the original color of the hat. So on this back piece, again, going through mostly with the V99 and getting that as dark as I can. I'll leave a little bit of that center part there for the V9 just to get that purple color incorporated into the hat to keep with the theme of my 3 Copic colors. So these pieces are completed, and I am ready to start assembling my hat pieces. We have 4 layers. This bottom layer where we just did the outline, I'm going to layer the top layer of the hat over, and I'll offset it just slightly. Sorry, it was a bit off screen here. I'll offset it just slightly to give it a little bit of dimension. Because I'm not using foam squares here, I am going to use foam squares on the back. I didn't want to pop this layer up too much. So if I offset it just slightly, it does give that dimension that I was looking for. So this is looking pretty good. The next layer, I kind of debated on this next piece here. This is the hat band, and I ended up going with that green to orange gradient on that gradient glitter paper. I wanted to bring in a little bit, a few extra additional Halloween colors, so I like the way this looks. It ends up turning out pretty cute at the end. So this is the hat band piece, and the bottom of this die cut is perfectly cut to match the bottom of this brim. So as you're starting to assemble this hat, you will see where the pieces go fairly easily as you're assembling. I am going to attach the front part of the brim now. I also offset this piece just slightly to give this hat a little more dimension. I also wanted to get a little bit more of that hat band in. So I've offset this just slightly to the bottom. And the last piece is that flipped up part of the back of the hat brim. So that piece, again, it lines up perfectly with the bottom of that die cut on the back of the hat. And as you're assembling, you'll see fairly easily where each of these pieces go. Next, we're going to move on to the little ribbon. The ribbon comes in 4 pieces as well, and those are fairly easy to assemble. You have the bow part, and then you have these 2 little slivers that are the inside of those 2 loops of the ribbon. You can cut those out of a slightly different color to sort of show the inside part of that ribbon. I did cut them just out of orange and kept everything very simple. There is also this little middle part of the bow. It's the front of the knot piece. So we'll attach that. And the ribbon is complete. I've made a couple of these cards and I put the ribbon in various places on the hat on each of these cards, and it looks cute, honestly, no matter where you place it on this this hat band. On this one, I think I'm going to put it near the front. I really like that orange contrast with the purple and the green on the hat. I think that's just really, really cute. So the hat is complete, ready to move on to this giant trick-or-treat greeting element for the front of the card. So I have cut this element out of some thin craft foam, just plain white craft foam, and then also the gradient glitter cardstock. And I like when I'm putting anything on top of craft foam. Craft foam is fairly flimsy. It can move everything sort of out of shape and out of position. So I like to use the cardstock layer as sort of my lining up layer. So I generally start at the top and I adhere everything from the top down. So I didn't really show it here in this part of the video, but I do sort of glue this in layers, working from top to bottom. So moving on, we are going to start layering the front of this card, and this is this lined paper, this pattern paper is from the Altenew Essential Black and White paper pack. I have cut this to 3 3/4 by 5, and I'm layering it on just plain black glitter cardstock, which I have cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And I'm ready to start layering on all of my die cut elements. So I am going to position this sort of over to the right hand side. I am going to pop up that witch hat. So I want to make sure I have enough space over on the left hand side to get my witch hat on. And also we want to put a few little embellishments, some glitter glue underneath the witch hat. Again, when you're working with a die cut that has craft foam on the bottom, it will sometimes move out of shape because of that craft foam. So as I'm adhering here, I'm making sure that the top of that element is lined up with that line on my pattern paper. I will use some foam squares to pop this hat up. I've sped this part up as well. Watching me adhere foam squares is probably not the most fun part of this video. I do cut some of my foam squares here at the top. I want to make sure that I'm giving lots of support to this element. I'm going to mail this to my granddaughters. I want to make sure that it stays really nice. So you can see there off camera, I did add 3 black glitter glue little dots underneath my witch hat. I did not film that part. But we're layering now onto black cardstock. This is Hero Arts Hero Hues in Pitch Black. It is cut to 5.5 by 8.5, scored at 4.25 to create an A2 card base. And everything is adhered. Loving, loving, loving the way this looked. I love this gradient glitter cardstock. Was a really good choice. So the card is complete, almost. I do like to make an inside element on my card, so somewhere to stamp a sentiment and write a little note to the recipient. I'm debating here whether I'm going with the Distress Oxide Mode Lawn or an orange. I believe I have Crackling Campfire out here. There really isn't enough green on the front of the card, so I end up going with the Crackling Campfire. And what I am going to do is just ink up the edges of this this inside panel for the card. I really like putting an inside element. I just think it adds extra interest to the card. It's so fun to receive a card where the creator has put so much time and energy and thought into to what you're making. And I know my granddaughters love receiving my cards. So I am just going around the outside edges here with the Crackling Campfire, making sure that I keep some white space in the center. So I'm creating a gradient, dark to light, keeping some white in the center for the sentiment. And I ultimately end up doing a little more stamping on the inside of this, this insert. So I pick up the card occasionally, the insert, to make sure that I really balanced everything left to right, top to bottom, and that I don't need additional ink anywhere, and that everything is blended out really well. So I'm coming back in with some Distress Oxide in Black Soot, and I want to just add a little bit of a smoky look to the outside of this card. So I am barely touching the edges of this card with my tiny blending brush. I want to just give it the element of being somewhat singed or worn or just a little spooky on the outside edges. So I'm barely going in and touching the outside edges of the card with this black soot. And again, I occasionally pick it up and look at it, from 1 or 2 feet away to make sure that everything is balanced, that I don't have too much ink on one side, not enough ink on another side. These small blending brushes are perfect for creating just dark edges on your card like this. So I'm liking the way this looks. I'm going to go ahead and clean up and then start stamping a sentiment on the inside. I have my Misty. I will put my card in with magnet, and the sentiment that I am using today is from the Simon Says Stamp Let's Spook Up Some Fun stamp set. I've used this so many times, but I thought this You're So Bewitching stamp was really great, went well with the witchy hat. So I am positioning, making sure I've got that in the center. And I am going to use, again, the Distress Oxide Black Soot ink to stamp this out. I ended up only having to stamp this once, which was interesting since I believe my stamp pad's getting a bit dry. But it stamped really well with the first stamp, so one time was enough. Love the way this looks. It's a bit toward the top of the insert, so I have lots of space down below to write a note to my granddaughters. So I wanted something else. I ended up pulling out the Hero Arts Hero Greeting Halloween stamp set. I wanted that little bubbling cauldron. Great size, goes really well with my witch theme. So I am going to place that down in the bottom right hand corner, and again, I'm going to ink that up with Distress Oxide Black Soot ink. And my stamp was new. I hadn't used this little bubbling cauldron before, so priming it there a little bit, getting some oil from my finger on there so that it won't be as sticky. I do have to ink this one up twice, again, because it's a brand new stamp. I've never used it. Generally, new stamps require a little bit of use before they start stamping optimally on the first try. Love the way this little cauldron looks, goes really well with the design, and I just love stepping up the inserts on the inside of cards. So I thought it still needed a little something else as I'm looking at it, so I decided to go for some black ink splatters. So I pull out my Liquitex Basics Mars Black acrylic paint. It's just some basic acrylic paint, nothing special. I'll put a little bit on my Tonic Craft mat and add a couple of squirts of water. You want a consistency that is more liquid than paint, a little bit thicker than water. So just a couple of squirts will do. Sometimes I use a fan brush to splatter. Sometimes I just use a round like A6 brush. I'm testing out the fan brush here to make sure that my splatters are exactly the size I want, and they are. So I want tiny splatters here. I don't want this to be the focal point, just to add a little bit of interest to the inside of the card. So I'm going over the card a couple of times and just splattering a little bit of black paint. Loving the way this looks. And I believe the insert is complete. So last step, I've glued the insert to the inside of the card. Here is the finished card. So cute. Love the way this turned out. I think my granddaughters are going to love receiving this. If you like this video, please like and subscribe to get more content from Pretty Paper Blackbirds.